In this video, we're talking all about Tiana's Bayou adventure. I'm joined by a fantastic panel. We're breaking down all the latest updates in regards to this re-theme of Splash Mountain. We're going to break it down, analyze it up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55. In this episode, we are breaking down all of the Tiana Bayou adventure updates that we got the other day. We got a lot of information, not a lot of groundbreaking, earth-shattering news, but some interesting tidbits that we're going to discuss and kind of talk about. But before we do that, I want to introduce my fantastic panel. We got Mr. Dr. Dre Sky, host of the Freshly Squeezed show, Fresh out of the Disneyland Resort this week. Mr. Vacation over here. Trey, welcome back, brother.
I'm happy to be back, and it's ironic that it did just come from Disneyland because, well, the whole trip was centered around seeing Splash Mountain off, and around this time, it appears that Disney invited some influencers in New Orleans to talk all things Tiana Bayou Adventure, which I'm so happy to break down with you guys right here. But before we get to that, if you guys want to follow me, you can go and do so right down here at Sky. Just go ahead and type it in, and it should pop up for, as Christine's Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel OG55, where my show is there, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice and news and info, squeezed fresh right from the grove.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Yes.
There we go. And to my diagonal, we have Mr. Theme Park Wizard, who is not only a huge Disney fan, a huge Universal fan, but a huge Blackpink fan. He is a straight shooter, and he's going to hit us with that.
Hit you with that do-do-do-do-do. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
There we go. You're going to hit us with that that straight shooting talk, right, Ethan?
Right.
Welcome back,
That's
brother.
right. What's up, Blackpinkers? You better follow me on Theme Park Wizard on YouTube, Theme_Park Wizard on Instagram, Theme_Wizard on Twitter, and buy all my shit at themeparkwizard.shop, where I'll be sure to rip your ass off.
There you go. Perfect, Ethan. And down below, we have Jaylin Theme Park EXP626 back on the channel. Jaylin, welcome back, sir. It's good to have you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be a part of this program once again. I'm here in spirit. You can't see me, but I'm here.
Yes. Well, Jaylin, if you can let everybody home know where they can find you on social media, my friend.
You can find me on Twitter. That is my main source of communication. I'm very I've been slacking. I'm going to be honest, but I'm going to get back onto it. Get very communicative, if that's a word, on Twitter, because that's where I like to be, talking amongst the theme park community. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Yeah, Jaylin is great, and we love having you on, Jaylin, and definitely follow him on Twitter. I'll be linking his Twitter in the show notes, in the description down below. So definitely check him out. All right, so let's dive right in, shall we? I'm going to go ahead, Dre, and I'm going to share your screen, and I'll let you set the table. I'll let you cook, Dr. Dre. I'll let you cook.
Well, I do appreciate it there. OG 55. Well, it appears that Disney, understanding that the messaging around Tiana's Bayou Adventure hasn't been the best, they invited a number of influencers down to New Orleans, where they met with Imagineers who are currently working on the project, including Sharita Carter, Carmen Smith, and some others. I guess they took them around a tour of New Orleans and what the Imagineers have been inspired by, while also releasing some brand new information that we have yet to hear until now at this point. So, per Scott Goosen here, new Disney announced award-winning artists P.J. Morton and Terrence Blanchard are collaborating with Disney on the music guests will hear in Tiana's Bayou Adventure when it opens next year at Walt Disney World and Disneyland Resort. Specifically to note on this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they gave, Disney Imagineers that is, gave PJ Morton the directive to write a hit new song for the attraction that was just as catchy, if not more so, than some of the classic attraction songs. So Small World, Pirates of the Caribbean, and otherwise. That was the directive coming out of Imagineering right here.
No pressure. No pressure, PJ Morton. No pressure. You just gotta top the Sherman Brothers. No biggie.
Exactly.
Yeah, no
That's gonna
pressure
be
at all.
really tough to do right there. But they also, I guess, from hearing his experiences with this, with the influencers that were there presently, I guess PJ revealed that he actually went through the original soundtrack for Princess and the Frog, and it's taking that music and kind of incorporating it into this attraction in kind of a way that kind of has it conform to the story that they're actually trying to tell here. There were individual bites and segments where it's like, oh, well, that's going to work perfect for this scene right here, taken directly from the actual original soundtrack. And that kind of messaging coming out from Disney was a good thing, because I think a lot of people were worried that this was just going to have original music, even though people going on a Princess and the Frog attraction are going to expect certain musical cues to be present in the attraction itself.
Yeah, yes, 100% right. And what I hope they do is that we have a song that's perfect, I think, from the original movie, Going Down the Bayou, right? That's a perfect song, I think, as kind of like the foundation for the music component of this attraction to kind of. So I think that that could basically be the zippity doodah of this attraction, right? Going down the bayou, and then as you pass certain show scenes, it kind of weaves into these other songs. I think that's kind of the way to go. Is Disney going to do that? I have no idea. I hope they do, but we'll see. But Ethan, what are your thoughts on this? The music announcement. We're going to have the original movie songs mixed in with some of this new music. PJ Morton, Terrence Blanchard. What are your thoughts on this, sir? Ethan.
Oh, sorry. All right. Well, you know what? I was one of those people. I thought there was going to be no music from the film, and I was very disappointed. But then I'm happy to hear that there'll at least be some renditions of the new of songs from the film with the new stuff. I'm not sure it's going to fit into the sequel storyline, but I guess they'll figure that out. I like that there'll be music in the queue. I'm excited for that as well as the smell of beignets. Should really enhance the queue, in my opinion.
Right.
Well, it's interesting too. You mentioned the queue and the music, Ethan, and from what I'm hearing from this press release is that they're gonna have basically like a radio show playing in the queue that will sort of set up the story. Now, I talked to Dre on the phone. About this, and I actually told him, I'm like, this is actually kind of a relief in my opinion, because I was really worried that they were going to do kind of like this kind of, I don't know, like just Tiana, like over the speakers, like, hey, everybody, like, this is what we're doing, and it would be kind of awkward. I like the idea of using like a radio show. It kind of gives it that sense of more authenticity, kind of like the Jungle Cruise with the radio they have there. I think you can kind of utilize this radio. Yeah, like utilize this radio show thing as to sort of tell you the story of the attraction without seeming too forced and contrived. But what do you think, Jalen, on that in terms of the music, PJ Morton, Terrence Blanchard, the radio element in the queue? What are your feelings on this, sir?
I think it's a really good idea. Just as you were saying, to really immerse guests into that world. One of my favorite queue spaces is Indiana Jones for that specific reason. I genuinely feel like I'm in a 1920s, 1950s era going through a temple. And you know what from that point. So the fact that this is gonna be one of those type of attractions where we're immersed completely into Tiana's world. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to newer attractions is immersion, because it's kind of like we've been spoiled with super immersed attraction spaces. Like for example, we have Galaxy's Edge and Radiator Springs. Those are just two examples of places where you walk into it and you feel like there's no other outside world besides what you're in. Obviously, this won't have its own land, but the way that they're advertising it, the way that they're putting their effort towards it, you would think that it's having its own land. She has her own restaurant on the way, obviously her own attraction on the way, and we don't know the future of Winnie the Pooh or Hungry Bear because as of right now, it can fit, but at the same time, it doesn't really fit. So her footprint may step over onto Hungry Bear and Winnie the Pooh. So this is a massive thing. It's not just a renovation of a former attraction. This is a movement that they're trying to go forward with, and just them by having this radio style cue and the artists that they're bringing in to help create create the music, I think is a really good step forward because this ride has a lot of doubts. So.
Well,
Yeah,
it does. Go ahead. Go ahead, Dre.
it's definitely got its its own share of a hill to climb, let's say, right? And they actually talked about that, which was quite interesting. But before we get to that, the radio that you're actually going to be hearing this kind of spiel from is going to be inspired by this actually antique radio that existed in New Orleans for some period of time. I believe there is a special significance surrounding that as well. So, they are trying to create a kind of an authentic experience for sure. The thing that kind of concerns me is that completely going to translate, right? Because do you go to Disneyland necessarily for an authentic experience, or do you go to Disneyland for a kind of fantastical experience, right? So this is going to be the play between, realism and escapism. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of walk that tightrope there. I guess this radio is housed at the New Orleans Jazz Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana, as inspired a prop that guests will see in the attraction queue, a radio playing music and making an announcement that Tiana needs assistance for the party being thrown that evening. So that's what's going on here.
I
And
think
one more thing.
Oh, go ahead, Jay. No, go ahead, sir.
I was just gonna say that when I was there last night, um, one of the last attractions that we did was Winnie the Pooh, and so we walked back there, and it may have been because it was later on at night, but it was pretty busy throughout the day. But one thing that I noticed that was extremely obvious is that it's extremely quiet back there. Is like I don't even think there was any like ambiance music going on. So just the complete shift from quiet to this New Orleans style music are they going for, is this going to cover the whole area? Is this going to cover just the queue? That's what I'm curious to know because as of right now, I don't think there's any type of music or anything going on right now. And I think because of that, if they go for the route to where it covers the area where it's a New Orleans ambiance, then that proves even more that whatever else is existing in Critter Country doesn't have a long lifeline.
Right. And Dre, to your point about the realism versus the fantastical, I think when it comes to this particular case, though, I think that it's kind of the New Orleans theme is sort of the New Orleans realism theme, which is New Orleans Square, basically. I mean, that's to a letter what New Orleans is, or what I'm saying, it's a very realistic interpretation of the city. It's already been like a proven success, so I don't think that's really too risky. In my opinion, I think that the fantastic will sort of come with the attraction, inside the attraction, and that's all about execution. But the theme itself, and I think that the way it's kind of integrated into New Orleans, I think will be fine. It's just, will they stick the landing with the attraction? And that's that's where my worry comes in. Because see, this is the problem with Imagineering right now. Okay, the problem with Imagineering right now is that they love to over-explain things, and I'm worried we're gonna get into this log, and it's gonna be this over-explaining of the co-op, salt mine, missing ingredient stuff. when you don't need any of that. Some of the best attractions at Disneyland are very simple concepts. You get in a bobsled and you go through the Matterhorn, the Swiss Alps. You get in the spaceship and you go through outer space. You get in a train and you go through the Southwest. It's very simple. There's not a whole lot of complexity to any of these attractions, and that's what makes them so digestible, so consumable. I'm worried with this one, it's going to be a whole bunch of explanations and what she's doing with the restaurant and the missing ingredient and why we in a salt mine and the yada yada yada. It's just Disney. Just don't get lost in that. Don't lose the plot with too much of explaining and the story knots and all that. That's what really is kind of making me a little nervous. But if you just go in there with a New Orleans vibe, like the land, like New Orleans Square, and you just have the great music and you have these great characters and we're having fun, you're good. Just don't over explain it. Go ahead, Dre.
Counterpart.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ethan.
I didn't say a counter. I agree, OG. No over explaining, but do you think they're gonna feel like they have to over explain because they might think the people are coming to ride a Princess and the Frog ride based on the movie?
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So like when they realize that's not happening, I feel like then they may feel like they have to over explain to understand what this is, and it's not the movie, it's something different. So in that case, they shot themselves in the foot with that one.
Well, kind of. They might have to. They might not have to, because when Star Tours opened in the 80s, people were probably expecting a Star Wars ride based on the movie, and we didn't get that. But go ahead, Dre.
Well, we saw the Death Star.
Yes,
we saw TIE fighters.
But you're seeing
Star Wars type adventure.
Yes, and you're seeing the alligator and Tiana. So it's
yeah, but we're also getting a whole bunch of stuff that, I mean, look, okay, for example, right? If you say to people, we're getting a Princess and the Frog attraction, and you show them this image, their brain's going to be like, wait, what? Who's this kid? I never saw him in the actual attraction itself. But this is the concept that they released for this. They don't release stuff for, Ray the Firefly, Dr. Facilier, or some of these other iconic things that people have remembered from the movie. They release stuff like this. And we'll get into why they are releasing concept for this, but they're spending so much time trying to be as authentic as possible. This is why I bring up the juxtaposition between authenticity and fantasy, right? Because they're spending so much time trying to be authentic that it might be detracting from the actual attraction experience itself.
That's fair.
And is that authenticity going to be, I don't know, reverberated and accepted by the audience in such a way that people will appreciate it? I'm just not sure. But what they will not appreciate is being, embarking on a Princess and the Frog attraction and not seeing those Princess and the Frog style ride take place in front of them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I agree with you on that. I think they are spending way too much time. We talked about this on the phone, like Dre, like they're spending way too much time kind of selling the authenticity. I think authenticity is a good thing. It's in and of itself, authenticity is good, right? Like Walt strived for authenticity, whether it's Main Street, whether it's New Orleans, he strived for that. That's a good thing. But when you only focus on that, and you ignore the fun factor, you ignore the story, you ignore the characters and the IP, and you ignore everything else. Basically, you're sacrificing everything for authenticity. That's where you're going to have a problem, because every interview, every piece, every press release, every video we see from Disney is about going to New Orleans with the authenticity. But what's going to make the attraction fun, Disney? Can we get some of that news? Like, why is it always about, like, we're on our 95th field trip to New Orleans to do this authenticity thing? I get it's authentic. That's great. But can we also talk now about how the ride is going to be good?
Yeah. That's what people are hoping for, and yet we've seen very little of that. And honestly, when these influencers were actually down in New Orleans, they didn't get to see much more than we did, which is surprising. They didn't even play any of the music that they're going to have for this attraction here. It says right here, Morton is creating a new original song for the attraction, as well as new renditions of songs from The Princess and the Frog. Blanchard, who played Louis the Alligator, trumpets parts in the film, is working with Disney on the music for the queue. They didn't even play the original song or even a demo reel of it. They just said, well, we got an original song. It's going to be great. And then we're going to move on. And so it's like, okay, like they're going so like they're taking these influencers on this Cajun expedition where they go out in a boat and go through the swamps of Louisiana and so forth, and it's like, hey, look, this is what we kind of want to feel for this attraction. It's like, that's great, but why not show concept art? Why not show maybe some animatronics that might evoke what you're actually going to do here?
Right.
It's just all over the place in terms of the messaging, and I felt that Disney still hasn't dialed it in necessarily, because maybe they just don't have anything to show right now.
Well, I think it's a large part of it, to be quite honest, and maybe I'll get canceled for saying this, but I think a big part of the issue is that they're very focused on appearances culturally, right?
Yeah.
Like we're like the whole authenticity focus is because, hey, look at us patting ourselves on the back. We're so authentic and so inclusive, right, everybody? Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're not treating this like a regular attraction because they've wrapped it up into this culture war. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
I think Disney, look, we get it, Disney, that this is authentic and great for that. We want authenticity. But now I think it's time to pivot. Okay. Now it's like Daddy Josh, man. It's like, he's in the park all the time. We talk about how great being in the park is, talking to guests. That in and of itself is a fantastic thing, Daddy Josh. We love you for that. But if you only do that and you don't do anything else, that's not necessarily good. You have to do step 1 and step 2.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about this whole project. It just shows how much of a risk Disney is willing to take. Because let's just think about it. If they were to just make this an original concept based off of the movie, everything already fits perfectly with the music, the story. Everything would have fit perfectly if they would have just put a Princess and the Frog ride using the Splash Mountain ride system.
Right.
It would have worked perfectly. There would have been, there would probably been some flaws, but it would have worked perfectly. The fact that they're willing to just go the complete opposite and create a whole new story and hope guests are able to attach themselves and understand the story, that shows the risk Disney is willing to take. And I don't know how much more going forward, like if they were to do another project, will they be willing to do something like this? And that goes to what OG is saying, is that it's more apparent to fit the culture,
Right.
so that there's people in the industry, they feel good, like, oh, Disney's doing something right. We can be on their side, or whatever the case, if they want guests to be on their side, or whatever the case may be. But I don't think you should be making a Princess and a Frog attraction to please certain people, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I think you should be making a Princess and a Frog attraction because maybe there needs to be a Princess and a Frog attraction, but not for any other reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, no, Jalen, to your point, when that kind of mentality behind doing a Princess and the Frog attraction impacts what you create, you see effects from that, and I think that's what we're seeing here. There were, I from what I understand, Imagineers have had some disagreements with what actually happened in the movie and so forth, what elements to actually pull from the movie, and so it's like. You have this kind of well-meaning right now, right? Well, we can't depict Tiana in a dress. I mean, she's got to be a business owner, right? She's got to have this employer-owned co-op, right? So we got to put her in pants, which, by the way, kind of runs counter to that authenticity thing that they were talking about before. Because, I'm sorry, a woman in the 1930s wearing pants in the South? Okay, go on. For the viewers at home, while you're listening to this amazing presentation by OG55, have us on the background. Go ahead and do a Google search right now and look up 1930s fashion, 1930s fashion South, 1930s female fashion South. I will guarantee you, because I've looked, and I was on pages and pages and pages of images, you will not find a single photo of a woman wearing pants in the 1930s, especially in the South. That will not happen at all.
But also, And then also, look at the other guys, right? You own Snow White, she's in her traditional outfit. You own all these other, Little Mermaid at DCA, she's in her traditional outfit. All the other princesses in her traditional outfit. So Tiana
Right.
should be able to be in her traditional outfit, just the way people saw her, and
Right,
meet and greet her in the parks right now.
But Wizard, this is
And
a
not to
manifestation of what Jalen was talking about right here. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Jalen.
Yeah. Well,
I
and
was
here's
just
the
gonna
thing.
say.
Go ahead, Jalen. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that all those characters in their attractions have their original stories tied to their attraction.
That's true.
That too.
She's the only one that's an adventurer and doing her own thing, and
And look,
I don't know.
I get it. They want to make her some frogs, but they should do my frogs from the Motor Time. But they should have done what I suggested and have two animatronics of Tiana or just one. Tiana on one side explaining the story of how she became a princess. So that way she still has the full size animatronics, but then you also do the frogs on the other side. So it's like an actual story of the actual movie popping up.
No,
Well, and
that's
go
that's
ahead.
a
That'd
great.
be easier
That's
and
a great.
cheaper way to solve the problem.
Yeah, exactly. We're not trying to land a person on Mars right now. This isn't exactly rocket science. I don't understand why they have such a hard time with this. This isn't really that complicated. Go ahead, Dre.
Well, would anybody accept, let's say, a Little Mermaid attraction that was like a sequel attraction, and let's go into the Adventures of Little Mermaid post film? I mean, would anybody really accept that, or would they just necessarily accept a retelling of the film? Now, I understand there are Imagineers like Tony Baxter, for instance, who's like, well, book they call it book report attractions and so forth. Right. I get that, but with the Fantasyland dark rides, even Tony Baxter himself engaged in book report type attractions. Right? We all have experience in the 1983 version of Fantasyland, right? And those include a lot of like these kind of book report style attractions, right? Whether it be Snow White's Enchanted Wish right now, or Peter Pan, Pinocchio, they kind of take you through their stories, to Jalen's point right here. So, it would be a hard sell to say to people, hey, look, Snow White's and her adventures, not important. Let's go ahead and let's follow what happened to her afterwards. And that's going to be the attraction. That'd be a hard sell. And yet they're doing this with this attraction on an IP that people, do like and want to see represented, with an attraction that was beloved. So that's kind of where these discrepancies occur in people's minds between what is expected and what they're actually getting.
Now, here's the thing, though, and I'm gonna put this out there. I don't know. I don't really know the answer to it. I'm kind of just kind of spitballing here, but like, I definitely see all the points here. Like all the other Fantasyland attractions do the book report style. Yeah. But we also have to acknowledge, too, to be fair, this is a different scale. This isn't like that dinky little dark ride in Fantasy. This is an e-ticket. Now, we've seen, though, with e-tickets and big franchises that they have kind of veered off the films with Indiana Jones, with Star Tours, with Rise of the Resistance, with Millennium. I mean, they've done it over and over again with e-tickets. Now, maybe not with the Fantasyland dark rides, but this isn't a Fantasyland dark ride, though. I mean, this is an e-ticket on par with these other rides I'm talking about, like Indiana Jones or any of the others. So I could see why Disney is like, well, maybe we need a different approach. This is a bigger scale. Why are we going to do the book report thing when we have this massive show building and a lot of these other e-tickets that we have big properties for, we don't do that. So I can see that. And just because we've always done princess films in the book report style doesn't mean that we have to be chained to that forever either. So I can kind of see the counterpoint here where it's like, okay, yes, we have Peter Pan, we have Snow White, we have all these other little Fantasyland dark rides that do follow the stories beat by beat. But does that mean we have to do that with every princess film? Like, is that a rule now?
How many?
Now look, even in this concept art, look at her. She's just like me or something, like my friend. She's not. It's called Princess and the Frog, and I barely see her in any type of princess-y stuff. Like, you can do that, but at least dress the character like, she's a little princess.
Yes, and I agree with that.
They talk about all the the little black girls, or they want to look up to somebody. They don't want to look up to someone in sweatpants.
Business owner.
They want to look up to a princess. They want to also be a princess too.
Let's
Well,
do the
and-
Bob Iger ride, right? You know, it's like, oh, look at my stock price and how it's gone up over my years, and you know, you have an animatronic Bob Iger
and
pointing to the
that's
shareholders meeting. That's what people want to see, was it? I just don't. You understand? The average 9-year-old, this is exactly what they want to see.
Well, and there's this thing too, like with Disney, right? Where it's like, and not just Disney, actually, to be fair, it's a cultural thing right now, where it's like, for like, if a female is sexy, right? If she looks really feminine and sexy,
And it's bad.
yeah, like hey Ethan, like our friends Blackpink over here, right? Hi,
And
hey.
also, like our friends Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah,
Right, exactly. Where if they're sexy and they're feminine, then it's somehow they're weak. No, dude, Jessica Rabbit's not a weak character, and she's sexy as hell.
Ass.
Yeah, Blackpink, they're strong female. They're savage as fuck, and they look like women, and they're very attractive, and they're very sexy, and they're very feminine. There's nothing wrong with being feminine, and like I don't understand where that came, like why that is such a thing now, where it's like in order for Tiana to be a strong female, she needs to wear pants and look like a safari guide. She can wear a dress and be a strong female too. I don't know why that's a thing. Go ahead, Jalen. I'm so sorry, sir.
Oh no, it's okay. I was just gonna say, it's kind of strange that we have this attraction here in this spot where I don't know about you guys, but for the longest, every time I get on Pirates, that whole scene in the beginning would just give off Princess and the Frog.
Right.
Well, we know they weren't gonna remodel Pirates of the Caribbean, but it just seems like that was an opportunity where they can probably mimic that, that type of idea, because that screams New Orleans, that screams Princess and the Frog. This
Yeah.
whole salt mine and we're going to, like, what do we even? I don't even like. Splash Mountain had a start. We're introduced to the characters. We go down to the laughing place, and the laughing place turns out to be a bad thing. And then we're being chased around by Bear and Bear Fox, and then we plummet to our possible death through the Briar Patch. There's a twist.
I'm sorry, Jalen, but you can't like Splash Mountain, or else you're racist.
No.
Right.
I'm saying this to say. It had some type
simple.
of structure.
Yeah.
And it was simple. Whereas this whole salt mine thing, I don't know what's the direction. What are we?
Yeah.
I'm getting on this log. Were we taking a tour of a salt mine? Like, I mean, I guess. Like, I didn't come to Disneyland to take a tour of a salt mine.
No, I feel you, man.
And then what's gonna happen? We're gonna get to the top of the salt mine, and there's no more salt mine. So let's drop to our deaths and go to another salt mine. Like, I don't get the idea of this at all. None of it makes sense.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head, man, because it's like what I think the idea of the salt mine is to explain the hill.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, explaining away, and this is what we were talking about earlier with the story knots and overthinking things. I'm telling you right now, Disney, the majority of people don't know that Louisiana doesn't have mountains. Okay, I'm telling you, people don't know. They just
if they did, they probably wouldn't care. Look at the Matterhorn, right? You really think some snowy mountains will be right next to a lagoon with Finding Nemo and a castle? Right. They don't care. You just
no one gives a fuck about that, Disney. Like, to have your hill, have your drop. You don't need to over-explain it, and just have New Orleans in the mountain. That's all you need, and people will be fine. They're not gonna. They're not gonna. Oh wow, this ride sucks because you know what? Louisiana doesn't have mountains. This can't be? No one's gonna do that. But you're ruining the story now because now you're trying to over-explain something that no one's gonna care about, and you're trying to over-explain it into the salt mine thing.
And also, I'm sure salt mines don't even look like that. I mean, I haven't seen one, but I bet you they don't look like what Splash Mountain looked like. And they're taking away my iconic tree stump. I'm very upset about that.
We're talking about a franchise that has magic, voodoo, all these kind of things. Couldn't it have been easily explained away, saying, "Hey, Mama Odie erected this mountain in the middle of the bayou to retell the story of of Tiana's journey through Princess and the Frog, and she's inviting you to come on and join her." Like it doesn't have to be that crazy, it doesn't have to be that insane. But apparently, from what I gather, the Imagineers had a certain concept in mind. and they took it to some of these representatives from New Orleans and some of these other kind of people that kind of specialize in New Orleans history, and we're like, nope, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that, because it's not authentic, it's not this, it's not that, it's not. And they had to change all of these things in order to reflect the authenticity of the area. Well, when you do that, you're sucking the fun out of it. And that's what Jalen was talking about before, right? It's like when you have this kind of framework in which you're restricting yourself. We talk about self-imposed limitations all the time when it comes to the Galaxy's Edge timeline, for example, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we see how that has impacted attractions. But when you have this kind of self-imposed limitation of authenticity, right, you have to create these story knots in order to make it make sense. You have to. And so that's going to require an explanation. That's going to require the radio popping off and, telling you what's actually going to come ahead versus, Splash Mountain, where it's just like, hey, we're just retelling the story. It's just fun. It doesn't need to be that deep.
Well, and they retell the story where it's not even, the story is so like it's not even really like a story almost. Like I almost think of Splash Mountain as like an experience like Big Thunder, where you just kind of get in the log and you experience like the vibe, right? Many people probably couldn't tell you the story of Splash Mountain because it's a very thin story in the first place, which is fine. Every great Disney attraction is like that, though. Every great Disney ride, like I said earlier, like Space Mountain, Matterhorn, none of them have complex stories.
Wait a minute. You just talked about how e-tickets, they create original story and,
right.
Especially on this scale and, going through something that is not necessarily representative of the actual films, right?
Right.
So
you don't have to
see in Splash Mountain how that can work.
Yeah, it can be absolutely. It can be done without telling the book report thing. You can do the vibe, the energy, the essence of the characters like Indiana Jones and still feel like Indiana Jones, still feel like Princess and the Frog without going beat by beat of the actual film. They could have done that here. And for some reason they decided, we're gonna do this really crazy storyline and tie ourselves in knots. It's crazy. I hope they don't do this. I hope they get into this attraction where they're like, okay, it's a salt mine, whatever, missing ingredient, but it's not beaten over the head. Just let us go log and experience New Orleans. And if you want to get into the storyline and you want to know more about it, fine, on your own free time, but you don't need it to enjoy the ride. But we'll see.
I just us saying salt mine. This made me think even more. Like this is gonna be their pitch when the attraction debuts and it's on the map and it has a little description or someone's explaining to them, and this little kid's like, "Oh, Prince of the Frog ride. What is this one about? A salt mine. Aren't you excited about that? Let's go to a salt mine and explore the salt mine." And it's very strange. It's very different. And I think what also happened is that they heard all of us screaming for an original attraction, original story. We want something original. That's what made Disney. That's what made Disney attractions great. And they gave it to us, but not in the way that we expected at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is fascinating because they're taking the IP that I think people have fondness for and are going, ooh, we're gonna give you something original with it, and it's gonna be really authentic to New Orleans, and it's like, yeah, but is that gonna be fun though? We'll see. For example, here, right? So Disney says brand new audio animatronic figures, and the attraction will bring, quote, sounds of New Orleans to life. This includes Prince Naveen's brother Ralphie, shown playing the drums in one scene, and a, quote, band of friendly critters playing joyful Zydeco-style music. Now, this drum set specifically, I guess, was inspired by, a 1920s lady bass drum set found in the, the New Orleans Museum, their collection there, which is an interesting idea, but it's like, Ralphie gets an attraction, but Dr. Facilier doesn't. That's a really kind of interesting thing, right? But if you wanted to present this kind of this original second chapter story that you're going with, and you want to be authentic and you want to incorporate this drum set, now you make these kind of decisions that are kind of like off kilter, like, okay, Ralphie was in there for like what, maybe 15 seconds, and we're making an
I don't even remember him.
It's a little strange. It's a little bizarre, these choices here.
Yeah.
And back to OG's point about how, or both of you guys' point about how e-tickets represent as sometimes a simple storyline, but if it has an IP attached to it, it kind of veers off into its own story. If we kind of look back at some of the e-tickets in California Adventure, like the Incredicoaster, it's the Incredibles, and they're chasing, and we're chasing Jack Jack because he's shapeshifting and doing all that. He does that in the movie, so we've seen that before.
Sure.
Like Guardians, that we're helping the Guardians, we're helping Rocket break out the Guardians through the collector's collection. We've
Yeah.
seen
Right.
something of that variation before in the movie, so we're accustomed to it. Radiator Spring Racers, we're in Radiator Springs and we're racing amongst other cars. We've seen that in the movie. So they have somewhat of their own story because we haven't seen those scenes in the actual movies. But
Yeah.
for some reason, we're still able to attach that. We're still able to understand what's going on in those e-ticket attractions. Whereas they're approaching this as like a whole new thing,
Yeah.
and no one has no idea about what's going on.
Well,
That's a
to your point
smart.
about Radiator Springs Racers, right? You go through the scenes that you saw in the movie. Now they're done differently, of course. They're incorporated differently because now you're that visitor to Radiator Springs, right? But
Right.
you do see, hey, you got new tires, or you got the, you're going to the paint shop that you saw from the movie. You're seeing the characters. You're going to the town of Radiator Springs that you saw from the movie. You're playing with Mater and tipping over tractors, something we saw in the movie, right? So they incorporate elements from the film, obviously, into a new story, but it still evokes that kind of Cars expectation that you may have had when you actually got into the ride vehicle. Whereas this is so far out of the movie, I just don't know how this is
Yeah.
going to translate. Go ahead, OG.
Well, yeah, I would disagree a little bit. I don't think it's so far out. It's still very New Orleans, like the movie. It's just that she's not in her dress, and it's not,
Watch the movie again. Watch the movie, and I think it would become readily apparent that almost nothing from it is actually represented. None of the iconic scenes are represented, right? For example, going back to the Radiator Springs Racers analogy, tractor chipping with Maynard or with Mater. That's an iconic scene that's represented
Right.
in that movie, right? You can distinguish that from the film and put that kind of pin on it.
Right.
This right here, what you're seeing right now on screen, where is that represented in the film? It's not at all. And this is why this is all kind of so bizarre. Now they're supposed to have scenes that kind of evokes, in this attraction here that evoke the film in some instances, like the
Right.
Fireflies, for instance, right? The Fireflies, I guess they're going to be bringing in this kind of new lighting technology that will travel with your boat and take you through this story, which I think is a good thing because we
Yeah.
can see that from the film right there. But it's these things are kind of far and few between, especially with the whole missing ingredient thing and so on.
Yeah.
Also, I don't see in any concept her best friend is not in here. Her that the king's daughter, whoever that was, that white girl, maybe because she's white, but she's not in here. But that's her best friend. You'd think she'd be in here because that's her literal in the movie. That's her best friend. So interesting.
That is interesting. I haven't heard anything about her. I don't know. Have you guys? I mean, Dre, have you heard anything about her showing up? Or because I know they're going to add like a bunch of new animatronics. I don't know if she's part of that or not.
I
haven't.
think, didn't we hear that her dad, Big Daddy's gonna be represented here in some way? But that's like John Goodman, and we haven't heard anything about him coming back. So I don't know. Maybe it is because she is white, and her depiction is problematic as juxtaposed against Tiana. I'm not quite sure, honestly. By the way, Ralphie. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on here. I just thought about it here. If we go back here, how old wizard did Ralphie say he was at the end of the film? Because they make a joke about it, right? Where she wants to marry a prince, and she's dancing with Ralphie and says, "Well, I waited this long," kind of thing. How old was he?
How old is it? Hold on.
Because this is supposed to take place like 10 years later.
Oh yeah, no, I think he was only like 7 or
He
something.
was
In
six
the,
and a half years old.
Okay,
yeah,
so he's supposed to be like
So 16.
16 or something. Is that a 16-year-old?
he looks a lot younger than 16 there.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm glad we're going authentic and they
They
can't
say he's
stay
still 6.
consistent with their own made up
Yeah.
story here. This is great. I just realized this, by the way, in real time.
Yeah, that is weird. This takes place. They said it took place 10 years later.
Yeah, so let me get the exact date because I think this story is supposed to take place in 1937. I want to say.
And the movie was 27.
1939. Right. So let me go ahead and see. While I'm looking that up, what do we got? What do we guys think about the Zydeco music and the these interpretations? I guess of these maybe original songs, new songs, or I'm sorry, original songs, old songs, through this kind of this musical motif that harkens back to very authentic New Orleans.
The Zydeco music is very New Orleans, and I mean, it makes sense to add that into the track. I mean, I don't see any issue with that personally. I mean, I know a lot of people might not be familiar with that kind of music. Go on YouTube and search it, and you'll hear what kind of music that is, and it fits very well into the theme. And that's not surprising because what are they focusing on? Authenticity. Like they're gonna get stuff like that right because that's the stuff they're focusing on the most. They're laser focused on that authenticity. So the stuff like the Zydeco style of music and all that, yeah, I mean, that's gonna really feel like New Orleans. But what do you think, Jalen? Are you even familiar with Zydeco music, or what are your thoughts on that?
The name of it doesn't sound familiar, but if I heard it, I'd probably say, "Oh yeah, I've heard this before." Because I'm very familiar with all types of music genres. I don't really have a specific genre that I listen to more than others. And I'm being completely honest when I say that. So I probably would know it if I heard it, but I'm not really familiar with the name. I think
Yeah,
that it this kind of leads into a debate of is critter country even a thing anymore? Because if we're gonna have this completely New Orleans style, New Orleans music, New Orleans attraction, and we're putting to this world where we're hearing 1930s, 1920s New Orleans music. Would that lead to confusion of where we're actually at? Because the obvious answer would be New Orleans, and there's obviously New Orleans Square, but they haven't made a clear announcement that it's even a part of New Orleans Square, um, which that has really nothing to do with what the topic is, but it's something I was thinking about,
No, yeah.
because that kind of plays into that. Like if we're put into this 1930s music genre, and that's all we're hearing around the attraction when we exit, when we enter, where we're in the space, you would think we were in New Orleans. So what's the what's
So
the
I
idea
think
there?
it's interesting because the Imagineers made it a specific point to call these new kind of animatronic animal characters critters. And you can see it represented in the quote there by Scott Gustin in his tweet there, suggesting that Critter Country will actually remain, which is fascinating. But I think in Disneyland's specific case, with these new attractions that go into these parks, they always want a shopping and dining component, right? A retail and a food component. So what are we getting here? We know that we're getting the attraction itself, obviously, but we're also getting what is it? Tiana's Palace taking over French Market and Eudor's Chic Boutique in New Orleans Square itself, right? So that there's your food component and there's your retail component
right.
Represented there. And I think they wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. One, it's in New Orleans proper, which I think they want to set these things in, which is an interesting idea. But also, too, I don't know if they're being given the budget necessarily to redo the whole back area of Critter Country.
No.
And so, I don't know. I think what it sounds like, I kind of thought that they might take over that shop that's in between Winnie the Pooh and what was formerly Splash Mountain, but it sounds like they might not be.
Well, and
Oh, Poop Corner.
this
Corner,
IP is actually, and I've said this on many videos since the attraction was announced. It actually does straddle the IP itself, right? Does actually straddle New Orleans and Critter Country kind of perfectly. Like, and so you have a lot of critters in this IP, like you're seeing here. This could tie into what you're seeing right here. Could just as easily tie into Critter Country as anything else that we currently have in that land, right?
Yeah.
But then you also have the very New Orleans centric stuff too, which also ties into New Orleans, and that's one of the big reasons why I actually was really supportive of this change, because it does kind of dip into both sides of like the New Orleans and the Critter Country. It kind of makes a lot of sense. So I never even noticed that they do mention them as critters in the press release. So maybe they will just keep Critter Country and it'll just kind of they'll use Tiana as sort of the segue, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Because like I said, I mean, it does fit both in a lot of ways. It really does.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking too. Like, if it's either way, I don't have a problem with this staying Critter Country. But it was just one of those things where it's like, look at our situation with placement of Splash Mountain or Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and then look at Magic Kingdom's situation with placement. They have a whole different problem with their hands, where they're bringing a New Orleans story or a New Orleans-esque story to Frontierland, and they're probably gonna be pitching the Critter Country or Critters what's the word? The Critters idea, I guess. They're gonna probably pitch that more on that side of the town, because like I said, their placement is way worse than ours. So you would think like with our placement of our Splash Mountain, it's like, just move or just expand New Orleans Square, and there you go. You have it fits perfectly. Whereas it's like theirs is in the middle of nowhere, and you're putting New Orleans in the middle of Benjamin Franklin and Liberty Square and the Cowboys in Frontierland. So it's kind of weird.
I believe the timeline that is set for Walt Disney World's version of Frontierland, which if people recall where Splash Mountain is located or was located in that whole thing, it's between Big Thunder and Frontierland proper. And I believe the timeline given is 1850 through 1890, which is, by the way, just to give people an idea of how much, of what the dilation we're talking about here in terms of where this is set and Frontierland. The distance and timeline, even from the top end, from let's say Frontierland to Main Street, is a factor of fivefold when compared to where Tiana's Bayou Adventure is supposed to take place and Frontierland itself. So we're talking 50 years between, even on the top end there. Of that range. So that is going to be a really interesting problem that they're going to have to solve here. Now, we have heard proposals as to how they might do it, right? That they might, I believe, Jalen, I think you intimated that there have been talks about expand the New Orleans theme in Frontierland over there. Maybe taking Pecos Bill and turning that into Tiana's Palace and doing that whole thing. So we'll see what ultimately comes of this, but it's a real big problem over there at Walt Disney World for sure. That's going to require a lot more effort and investment than it will ever at Disneyland.
Well, and I know Braden from Mickey Views and DSNY, they were reporting like a couple months ago that they're actually going to turn that whole area into a New Orleans Square, and then Big Thunder would be part of a new kind of Southwest style land with Coco and what have you. So I hope they do that. We'll see. I mean, that would be the smart move. Go ahead, Jalen. I'm sorry, sir.
I was gonna say real quick while I was on the top of my mind, while we're talking about this, the aesthetic. Let's just talk about our park, our home park. The aesthetic of New Orleans Square is so strong. Like, let's just think about this. We have Pirates of the Caribbean or Caribbean, however people see it. We have Pirates that fits very perfect in New Orleans Square. And then you walk down the street, and now you're starting to get into that Bayou-esque era of New Orleans, and now there's a haunted mansion, and that fits perfectly in New Orleans Square. And so now let's just say if you were having a New Orleans Square type of day, you started at Pirates, you enjoyed that experience, You walk down the street in New Orleans, and now you're getting to the Bayou, and now
Yep.
you're at Haunted Mansion. That was spooky or whatever. That was pretty cool. Now you
Yep.
walk even further down in the Bayou, and now you're at a salt mine, and you're experiencing Princess and the Frog. It's
Yep.
still the salt mine's kind of tricky. It's still kind of weird, but that still fits almost perfectly with the aesthetic of New Orleans
Without
Square and New
without
Orleans.
question. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Whereas
absolutely.
I was gonna say, and whereas if you're going into Magic Kingdom, you're going through Liberty Square, and you're like, oh, that's the guy on the $20 bill, and this and that, this is that history. Um, I don't know how Haunted
Ancient
Mansion
jazz.
fits in. I don't know how Haunted Mansion fits in Liberty Square. They figured that out.
Yeah.
But then you walk down, and now you're in Frontierland, and oh look, there's a salt mine with critters in it. I remember that being in New Orleans, but okay. And then you walk down the street, and now you're experiencing a runaway train in the Old West. So it's like it's very confusing and very weird. Um,
And it always
yeah,
has been because of how they kind of built that park out, right? So everything kind of starts off cohesive, and how they incorporated Haunted Mansion, for example, into Liberty Square was that is more of an opulent colonial style version of that exterior for that attraction, whereas it's a Southern plantation for New Orleans in Disneyland. So when the park is built in 1971, like those things are pretty cohesive, and then the decision comes, well, we have to build a Pirates of the Caribbean really fast, so we had to like build out its own alcove, its own Adventureland outpost right there for that. And then
right.
it's like, well, we were going to get Thunder Mesa, but now we're just going to get Big Thunder. Where do we place that? Will we place it on the area that was going to be occupied by Thunder Mesa? But Thunder Mesa was going to have a lot of different. It was going to be like one could imagine a what would be the best analogy to it? It's like Frontierland on steroids with like a Tom Sawyer's Island almost aesthetic to it. So it was all going to be very cohesive. But when you only get Big Thunder, well, you plop it right there. Now it's kind of weird, and Splash Mountain, obviously. So it's all kind of these square pegs, round holes kind of thing. Whereas I agree with you, Jalen, in terms of going through these attractions systematically, right? I think it works, and well, the Bayou is already represented in Pirates of the Caribbean, which we'll get back to in a moment. But it does work. It does flow very, very nicely, and very cohesively. So in terms of the theme, I never was that worried about how the theme of this attraction would kind of take place as nestled in between New Orleans Square and Critter Country, because I think you could get past that.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the story
Right.
taking
That's the biggest.
place is the thing that I'm most concerned about, because initially it was like, oh, we're just gonna tell certain we're just gonna provide certain scenes from the movie into this attraction, right? We're gonna take them, place them in there, and it's like, okay, works. But now, because we're going off on a completely new story, that's what worries me.
Yeah, and the thing too that's kind of, for me personally, and I kind of dive into this the psychology of like the fans and stuff a lot. One of the things that probably annoys me the most about this attraction is that it's a culture war thing now, and I'm not, look, that could be, that's a lot of that is Disney's fault. They dove headfirst into it, right? But that annoys me more than anything, because you're gonna have it's very, aside from us and a few other creators, there's very few that are gonna honestly review this thing, right? Like either it would, depending on where you fall on the culture war, you basically already wrote your review that it sucks, or you wrote your review that's the best thing ever because of inclusion. That's annoying, and that God, that gets under my skin, I just like, God.
Well, here's the really interesting thing about this dynamic, OG, and Dusty, as part of his interviewing with these Imagineers, actually brought out. He suggested, hey, look, listen, I think a lot of people, especially, from the, let's say, the pixie duster contingent of this whole thing, right, were very supportive of this attraction initially. Right, especially with that beautiful artwork that they showcased on day one, right there, right. And we're obviously talking about how there was the large tree up above what was formerly Splash Mountain, and you have Louis the Alligator and Tiana sitting there. It just looked amazing, right? And when
Right.
people saw that, it was like, ooh, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. Whereas what we're getting now has almost turned off even their largest contingent, like their base essentially that they had. And he related to them. He's like, hey, look, listen, you understand that people are disliking what you're doing, right? And so obviously why they invited influencers out. But
Right.
and it's like, they have big problems with what you're doing here. And the Imagineer gave a very surprising answer. Apparently he said, well, the bar has been set so low now by people by the wider community expecting this attraction that we'll definitely supersede it. And I'm like, that's not a good thing, though.
Well, yeah,
because you're taking Splash Mountain, which was a 9, people expect a 2, you give them a 5, you're still at a net negative here.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, that's a shitty answer. That's a shitty. That's a shitty answer. And shame on anybody. I don't even know who that was that said that, but they probably shouldn't have a job. The bar's low now, so we'll definitely succeed. That come on, that's ridiculous. No, fans are concerned about this attraction, and
Yes.
the honest fans are concerned, but they want something really, really good. There are, like I said, there are people that are rooting the thing to fail. No matter, they could have the most lifelike animatronic. It could be an AI fucking Tiana that walks through the show building, and there's some creators out there that will shit all over it anyway. I'm talking about the rational fans. We, like Mike Chat, ourselves, we all want this thing to be fantastic. And Disney needs to take the criticisms from the rational fans, the fans that are actually rooting for this thing to do really, really well, and take that into consideration and not poo-poo it and say, oh, well, the bar's so low, so, we'll definitely succeed expectations. That's a horseshit answer. That's really disappointing, Dre. God, dude.
That's what they said, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait, what? Like, what? That's where we're at right now. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And to kind of go with that point here, we have actually an article from People Magazine here. Disney executives admit they feel pressure replacing Splash Mountain, creating Tiana's Bayou Adventure. The tag here is, during a Q&A in New Orleans, the creative minds behind the forthcoming reimagining of the classic ride shared details about what to expect from the Princess and the Frog themed attraction to come. And so, asked by one attendee if they feel the, quote, pressure of replacing such an iconic piece of theme parks, Disney SVP of Parks Experiences and Products Carmen Smith responded with, quote, every day. Quote, I grew up with Splash Mountain 2, Disney executive creator, director Ted Robledo told attendees at Preservation Hall music venue, quote, we know there's a lot of love there. The team asked ourselves, quote, what do people really love about it? We think they love the thrill, the adventure, so we said, okay, that is sacred. We cannot take that away. Well, yeah, but they also love the music.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that.
Too,
The music, but but see, this is the thing. He purposely left that out because you can't keep the music. So he had to say stuff that they could actually keep. You can't keep Zippity Doo Dah. So he can't mention that, right? It's all very calculated and stuff,
And this, go ahead, Ethan.
Oh, no, I don't have anything.
Oh, go ahead, Jalen.
I was just gonna say too, it's kind of weird. This whole just thinking about this whole situation, and the I'm losing my train of thought as I was saying that. But I think what I was. Go ahead. I got to gain my train of thought.
Okay. No problem. People Magazine, by the way, is still using the old art, which I think is really funny. It's gonna live with them forever, by the way, because of how they advertised this thing when initially. But it's this quote is really revealing right here. So, Disney Park should be a home for all to enjoy, regardless of race, age, whatever your background may be. While the ride is considered a beloved classic, its history and storyline are steeped in extremely problematic and stereotypical racist tropes from the 1946 film Song of the South. There is a huge need for diversity in the parks, and this could help fill that need.
Look,
this is what we're talking about here.
Yes, and at this is where I'm kind of like, I'm real iffy, right? Because Song of the South has been seen as problematic long before this new woke age, right? Michael Eisner was banning this thing. Okay, this has been a problem for the Walt Disney Company for decades.
Sure.
So I understand not wanting an attraction theme to the ride that you won't even sell on Blu-ray or anything. You won't even show it. I get that. I'm not even opposed to that. I'm not even opposed to the retheming. I support, like, this looks freaking amazing, you know, and the New Orleans theme is a good one. I mean, Walt Disney loved it. It can't be that bad. That's fine. The issue that I have, though, is that the idea didn't come from a creative epiphany. It came from, we need to change it. How do we change it? That's the problem I have. Like, it's not like an Imagineer woke up one day and says, you know what? I have a really great idea for this thing. Let's see if we can make this work. It was like Bob Iger saying, this thing is racist. Can you shoehorn some IP in there now to make it work into something else? That's the problem I have. It's coming from a place of like political necessity, social necessity, and not creative. It's not a creative thing. But at the same time, I understand why they're trying to get rid of this IP because it's been a problem for the company for a long time. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's kind of a mixed thing. Like, I get the need to retheme it, but at the same time, it's like when you start your journey with that, it's a problem. You know?
Yeah, and that goes perfect because what I was trying to say earlier, because you made me remember. So I'm using Guardians as an example. We had Tower of Terror, right? There was a demand for a retheme because the new idea, the new creative element was Avengers Campus, and Mission Breakout was the first step to that. But when we went from Tower of Terror to Guardians, I don't know about you guys, but my first reaction was, oh, hell yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy, like that's something I'm looking forward to.
Mine was, oh hell no, but I like
that was my first reaction. Whereas with this, it was like you're going from Splash Mountain to a princess based storyline, which I'm not saying is a problem, but it doesn't have that same, especially when you're approaching with this whole new idea thing. It doesn't have that. It just gives off, like how you're saying, it just gives off a pleasing, a cultural pleasing, more than a new idea that is invited and welcomed, or needed. I don't, like you're saying, Splash Mountain may have needed a retheme because they internally throughout the business it was a problematic IP. But for an average guest, they didn't care, or weren't even aware of what was going on. They just seen a bunch of animals dancing on an attraction, singing on an attraction, and then they dropped to their death to a briar patch. That's the average normal guest thought process when they rode Splash Mountain, and I think that's why so many people over the time attached themselves, and they were so passionate about it closing because they seen it as that. And they tried
a reflection of the film.
Right. I didn't even myself. I didn't know it was based on a film. I thought growing up it was an original attraction that Disney just got an A+ on. It didn't happen until I was older and more mature that I was like, oh, this is based off of a movie that may or that could reflect a racial depiction. So, that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Well, and Jalen, and that kind of hits home the importance of execution with this attraction, because you have an IP that a lot of people have never seen the movie with Song of the South, have never seen the movie. They don't even know. A lot of people don't even know that's a movie. Okay.
Yeah.
But they still love this attraction. Right. So going into Princess and the Frog, if you nail the execution, this could be a fan favorite. Despite the franchise, despite whatever it is going on, it's execution. Right. They just have to nail this execution. And if they do that, then it won't matter. It really won't matter if it's a sequel attraction, if it's this, that, and the other. As long as they hit a home run with how they handle this, I think we'll be fine. But I am concerned. But I'm also cautiously optimistic. Then there's reasons to be. We have Bruce Vaughn coming back into the fold. Legendary Imagineer. I think he's going to go in and tweak some stuff. I think he probably already has, to be quite honest with you. You don't bring him in just to rubber stamp the stuff that was there before. So I think there will be stuff will be changed and tweaked. Number one. Number two, we've seen recently in the past maybe 5 to 10 years, Disney incorporate, because I know a lot of fans, screens are not bad. Universal uses them all the time to great success. Spider-Man is an example. It's all about how you do it, which is again execution, right? And for example, these Fantasyland dark rides like Snow White, Alice, Peter Pan, they've incorporated the physical sets with these projections and the screens, and they're gorgeously integrated into those. Now, if you can do that and replicate that same magic on a big scale like this, I think you'll have a huge hit on your hands. Because I think that could be really, really gorgeous with that New Orleans kind of vibe with the fireflies and the beautiful projections and the screens mixed with those animatronics and the sets. Oh, I think you have a recipe here for something really, really fantastic. But Disney, do not get bogged down with the story nuts. I do not want to sit in this log and hear Tiana talk about her co-op and how help me, friends, to find the secret ingredient. Now, friends, help me this, help me that. I don't want that. I don't want that. Just get me
Dora
in the log.
Explorer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Tiana the Explorer, Dora the Explorer. We're getting in and we're being told like we're 5 years old the whole step of the way. Just let me experience New Orleans and the water and the atmosphere and just leave it at that.
Well, a note about that missing ingredient part of it. I guess Dusty really hounded him about what this missing ingredient might be. And the Imagineer says, well, ingredients don't necessarily have to be food related. So that's an interesting idea, right? So it might
what
be
do they mean by
it might be just love or friendship or something. It might be one of those, and it's like, okay, whatever.
I just fell to my death through a briar patch for love and happiness.
Wait a minute.
No, wait a second. The way that would make sense because they're all about fighting the thing for the food.
Oh, but you gotta make it with love, that kind of thing, right? So
that's interesting. It was the friends we made along the way, right?
Yes, that's what it is.
So then the whole thing would be a waste of time.
Wow, isn't that absolutely fantastic? Look, listen. Okay, to Jalen's point, and to this point, actually, okay. When people initially saw that concept art and they thought about what a Princess and the Frog attraction might be like, I think people were very excited. I think it was like 50-50, right? Because you have the kind of the
culture warriors.
The culture warriors on either side, by the way, taking their kind of like, oh, hey, don't get rid of Splash Mountain for these reasons. This will always be bad, whatever. And then you have the people who are like, hey, you know what? Something new. This looks great. This looks awesome. But as we've gone along here, people are like, the people who were excited are going, we're in trouble right here. For example, right? So we had on a gal recently. It's about what would you say,
year?
OG, about a year ago? Right?
A year ago, yeah.
But you're gonna have her back on, by the way. gotta have her back on. But we talked about this attraction and what this could be, and she was very much like, hey, you could do Way the Firefly and taking you through there. You could do the Are You Ready as you're going up the lift hill. I think it'll be absolutely great, phenomenal, spectacular. And then as I informed her that wasn't actually what we're going to experience, her face was crestfallen. We saw this again, actually, on Five Fire's live stream of all places, where the gentleman that he was with was saying, oh, I can't wait to see Dr. Facilier going up the lift hill. This is going to be great. This was May 30th when the attraction's last day of operation was, and Five Fire's like, oh, hey, bro. I mean, you understand they're not going to do that, right? They're not going to, they're not going to do those things. It's going to be a completely brand new story. And the same reaction happened, crestfallen. It's interesting as people know more about this, the less they are interested in this redo at all. Which I think this is why Disney invited people to actually come down here, and let some of this information out and the messaging out, because they know the messaging has been very, very critical of this attraction because it is so beloved, and we're just not getting what people expect. And I will agree, it's all about execution.
It is. It's all execution, and because there's a good ride here. You have what it takes to create a really fantastic attraction here. Like I said, New Orleans is a fantastic theme. The music is fantastic in New Orleans. We love Jet. Like, you could do a lot here, but you just gotta hit it. You just gotta stick the landing. man, it's so frustrating. Hopefully too, what I'm really hoping is when Disney had those influencers at that event, they really listened to them, because I'm sure some of them picked, we're kind of speaking about concerns like Dusty was and what have you. I really hope Disney took that feedback seriously and is incorporating that into the attraction in whatever ways they can possibly do. I know it's kind of late in the game now to do some changes, but I hope they really do incorporate some of what they heard from the influencers, because the influencers have their ear to the ground. They talk to fans all day long through their live streams and yada, yada, yada. They should really pick their brains, because that's a wealth of information right there, Disney. Utilize that stuff, And if you're hearing from these influencers that X, Y, and Z is a problem, or this, that, and the other, then really try to address that. Do it now before the thing opens, and then you have all these bad reviews. I'm gonna go ahead and share your screen, Dre.
Yes, this is from that event, actually, that these influencers actually attended, and some of these historical and iconic locations in New Orleans. I would recommend, if people want to know more about this kind of stuff, definitely look at Mike Chat's video that they produced on their YouTube channel with Dusty, and another going through his experiences and what they were actually showcasing. I think, I think what they focused here, I think still is not going to placate people, because what they focused here was like authenticity, right? It's so authentic. It's so authentic in New Orleans. We're doing New Orleans so much justice by with this attraction that you're going to see at the river's edge. And it's like, people aren't really concerned about the authenticity, to be frank. And to be honest, in terms of authentic interpretations of New Orleans itself, I mean, we have had New Orleans Square and the Bayou as it exists at the front of Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean attraction for going on, 50 plus years now?
Yeah.
What are you bringing new to the table, I guess, is my thought processy, right? It's like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, you're doing all this New Orleans stuff, but we've seen that already. What new are you incorporating? And to go on this kind of authentic spiel, I know why they're doing it, and it's great. That's fantastic. At the same time, people are really concerned that this is going to be essentially a museum type attraction and not fun, versus something that was fun and thrilling with what preceded it.
Well, and that's the thing. You want to do step one and step two. Like that's the problem, is like the authenticity in and of itself is not a bad thing. Like, you want to be authentic. Like Walt Disney was authentic with his approach to this stuff too, and that's not a bad thing. But when you stop there, that's a problem. You still got to follow through with step 2 and 3 and 4, where it's like, okay, now we need a fun story. Okay, now we need the attraction to be enjoyable and entertaining.
Well, that's a fun story, all right.
So you have to follow through, and it's just, I feel like they're stopping at the authenticity. So we'll see. I really hope they can stick this landing. And this is frustrating to me, because like I've said so many times today, there is potential here with this. You can do a lot with this theme. God, Disney, just don't shit the bed on this. Come on.
Here's what I'm thinking. It's the same thing I was kind of saying earlier, where it's like, we are in this pickle where we don't want it to represent anything of Song of the South. We want it to be a new, fresh thing. But at the same time, we pretty much have no clue of how we're going to make a better story than what it was before, without it just being completely authentic to New Orleans and nothing having to do with the actual Princess and the Frog story. I was just thinking about some like blue sky thinking. Would we appreciate it more if, because I'm still confused as of right now about what about Splash Mountain, the attraction itself, besides the characters of Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox, what does that necessarily have to do with the racist story, I guess they're trying to promote or whatever?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, will we appreciate the attraction more? Like, what if they did a complete refurb and they updated the animatronics? They kept the characters, like the Brer characters, but they included Tiana and some of her characters, and it was like a combination of both. Would they appreciate the attraction more?
I think we, to some degree, Jalen, we will get that to some degree because I think that some of the critters in Splash Mountain, like maybe some of the alligators and maybe some of the little porcupines or whatever is in there, you probably will see some of those stick around. Yeah, obviously you're not going to see like Brer Bear and Brer Fox; those are too recognizable. But the secondary little critters in the attraction that are playing music, yeah, I think a lot of those will be incorporated into this one. Absolutely.
I think they will incorporate elements like the showboat at the end, right? The paddle wheeler at the end, which is so iconic. There's no reason to take that out completely. Retheme it, redo the facade of it, right? And make it more fitting with this new story for sure. But I think that will remain. My issue though is that I don't think almost any of these critters will actually make it from one attraction to the other because they have been notoriously unreliable in the past. These hydraulic figures going back to the 70s in some cases are very difficult to maintain, especially now. I think they want to replace those with new animatronics that are less maintenance prone, let's say, that are developed from the ground up, utilizing easily available parts that we have now. And I think that's where we're going. Now, I'm hoping that there will be structural changes to the attraction, not in the form of the ride layout. That's not going to change at all, but to some of the access paths that have been a problem for this. Splash Mountain has been notoriously under-maintained for the last, I would say, 10 years because of the fall protection standards that the resort has relatively recently implemented. And so if we can, get past those things and really maintain this to the degree that Imagineers will expect this to be maintained, that could be a net positive for sure. But
right.
I'm just, going through everything that they revealed, going through Dusty's interview and so forth, and even like Paging Mr. Morrow actually showcased, because he was invited out as well, showcased what the tour was actually like from his perspective. It's a very interesting watch as well, but nothing to me has alleviated my fears with this attraction. In fact, in some cases, they actually made it worse.
That's interesting. Now, what specifically made it worse?
Again, they're focusing on the wrong things. They're focusing on the
authenticity.
The authentic aspect of it. We're going to depict Tiana in 17 different, not 17, but multiple variations of her costume, and it's all just, a Tiana that we just do not recognize at all. They didn't reveal much, but what they did reveal was that, to me, the biggest thing was they're focusing on the wrong things. They just are. And
this is what I was kind of saying. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, this is kind of what I was saying earlier, where it's like we've gone from Splash Mountain, and it's been known as like when people that don't even go to the parks often, oh, Splash Mountain, oh, hell yeah, Splash Mountain, yeah, we're going to do that, yada, yada, yada. And now you have to break that news. It's like, oh, it's not Splash Mountain anymore. It's Princess and the Frog. And it'd be like, Princess and the Frog? Okay, I kind of don't want to do that. And you have to explain to them that, like, no, it's still the same attraction.
Right.
It's just themed to Princess and the Frog. Okay, I guess. All right. So but it's not the Princess and the Frog movie. You're in a salt mine. And it's like, okay. Like, now you have another adjustment. It's like, this is a complete shift. And this whole authentic approach is very, it's confusing for me. I don't know why they would do something that you had an ambitious attraction and now you're turning it into a museum or a historic relic. Like, I don't want to. I don't know. I don't know how many times. I might sound repetitive, but I don't want to go to a salt mine. I want to go.
Well, Jalen, I remember when a salt mine used to be a bad thing, like in Pinocchio, right? When the donkeys are screaming, "Mama, Mama," and you see the carpet coachman kind of, "Oh, you're going somewhere," and it's the salt mine, right? I remember when that was a bad thing. Now it's going to be a good thing, which is very interesting. But frankly, there's no drive for me to board this thing, honestly, from these experiences that they provided for these influencers in New Orleans. It's just, Are people going to book vacation packages for Salt Mine Tiana Co-op? I don't think so.
No, they won't. They won't. But this is where my expectation level with this attraction is basically. Like right here, right? You're seeing this is Walt Disney World's version. They've already cut the stump off. It looks like the Snow White Seven Dwarfs Mine Train at this point, and that's what I think the aesthetic will basically look like. It's basically what you see with the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It'll be very similar to that, I'm sure. It'd be like a little hill, right, just like you see over there. The internals, the show scenes and what have you, that for this attraction, I think my expectations are basically Frozen Ever After, or on a larger scale, what we've seen with the Fantasyland dark rides, like the Snow White and the Alice, with the projections and the physical sets. That's my kind of expectations with the inside. So that's what I think we're going to get, is basically a Frozen Ever After, Snow White adventure, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train thing is pretty much what we're going to get here. Now, is that the end of the world? No, it's not. That's not terrible, but I think that's kind of where I'm at.
I think
Go ahead.
I think you're right on the nail on the head with that one. When something else I was thinking about too is like, what do you guys think the lifeline of this attraction is, IP wise? Because it's giving me the same vibes as with the People Mover, how when it didn't have anything to do with culture, but they changed it to rocket rods because this is from what I understood, that it needed a fresh look per se, and that didn't last long because the ride started breaking down and started deteriorating, and the theme of rocket rods wasn't the same as the People Mover. The same thing with Dre's gonna hate me for saying this, but the same thing as Interventions. It started as America Sings, and it went into, or was it Carousel of Progress?
Yeah, Carousel of Progress from 1966, seven, I want to say, all the way up to 1972, and then starting in 1976 for the America's Bicentennial. That's where you have America Sings all the way up until, I believe, I want to say 1987, and that's when they actually take those characters out for Splash Mountain, 1989. Interventions opens in 1998 as part of the new Tomorrowland.
Right. And so my point is that sometimes these IPs or these themes get attached to these attractions, and they don't last long because they're not very they don't reflect well onto the crowd. They don't pull that pull that Disney really wants. Like you just said, no one's probably gonna book a reservation to Disneyland to go experience the Prince and the Frog and the Salt Mine. That's why I'm asking, like, how long do you think this theme lasts? Because I don't think it'll last long. If
it's not well executed, I don't think it'll last long either.
Well, and I don't think Disneyland at least has to worry too much about booking vacation packages because we're more of a locals park.
Sure.
So I think it's more about the locals anyway with us. To be honest, I mean,
Something
Florida
new
definitely has to worry about that, but we really don't.
New will get people in the park. That's no question.
I mean, the locals and all the vloggers are going to want to be first and get all the footage, and it'll be busy. And it'll look, in terms of measuring, like, if you were to measure success by how busy this is going to be, then it'll probably be a hit because everyone and their mom is going to be going to this thing. Just out of curiosity. Now the exit surveys are a whole different story.
That's a whole nother story.
Who knows? Who knows? But I think this is going to stick around, though. I don't think this is going to be a rocket rods. I think this is going to stick around. I think if they have problems with the surveying and people not liking it, then they'll put her in the dress. They'll do the things they have to do to make it more like the movie. Maybe they'll add Facilier, things like that. I think we'll see more of those additions before they retheme it to some other IP. Go ahead, Dre.
A lot of people who were disgruntled about the fact that Tower of Terror was replaced. I remember at the time when Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout actually opened, it was like, oh, see, look, the queue is only 40 minutes long. Oh, not as nearly as popular as Tower of Terror, Look, those exit surveys are really what move the needle, right? And for Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, I mean, it's consistently 9s, 10s, way higher than Tower of Terror ever was, and that's a difference maker, right? For go ahead.
And it's Guardians is technically the same ride system, but to me, it's like a whole different attraction. It's way more chaotic. Exactly. It's way more inclusive. than Tower of Terror. Like the Tower of Terror, you walk through an abandoned hotel, you go up and it's haunted, and you drop. Oh my god, spooky! Now you're going into this like almost party like environment.
Yeah.
It's a whole different vibe, a whole different. Like I tell people all the time, like, oh yeah, it's technically Tower of Terror, but it's a whole different attraction.
It's a whole different one, and even the ride experiences. Obviously there's 6 different profiles, but like
Sequences, yeah.
I love it because the old elevator shaft and how it worked in Tower of Terror. It used to stop at each floor. Now it like consistently bounces.
Bounces,
Yeah.
yeah. I love that. I love
It's
that.
really really cool, right? So, it's like a completely different experience. And look, if we had Disney Hollywood Studios' tower, for example, maybe I would agree with you. Like, I don't know if we should do this, but because that exists and Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout exists, I think they offer enough variety. Whereas this right here, I'm just not. And that was done by Joe Rohde, by the way, which is a very established Imagineer and on a very accelerated timetable. And to have that experience, that attraction, be as well received as it was is a miracle. But you have miracle workers doing it here. This is not even the A B crew. This is more like the C crew doing this, and it has me very concerned.
Well, and that's why I'm more concerned about the Florida version than the Disneyland version, because Bruce Vaughan came in right when Florida was already getting dug up and jackhammered. There's not much you can do with that. Well, like they've already started on that one.
Yeah.
Disneyland though, Bruce Vaughan has been there for a few months now, and they just closed Disneyland's version of this attraction. They haven't really done anything. It's only been a couple of days.
Yeah.
So I think that we have here at Disneyland, and that kind of coupled with the fact that Imagineering notoriously favors Disneyland. They put all the love into Disneyland. We've seen it with our Runaway Railway and just our Galaxy's Edge. They constantly just favor Disneyland. So I think our version will be better than Florida. I know. Sorry, Floridians. I think it's going to be better. And I think Bruce Vaughan is he had the opportunity to go into Disneyland's version because it hasn't started yet, to go in there and make some tweaks that will definitely make it better. And we needed him because he's one of the A squad. Go ahead, Jalen.
Literally the next day after they closed, they were already doing statistics. They were testing timing and doing all that. They had the the water jugs in placement of like actual people. So like they were already doing that stuff the next day. Like they didn't spare no time. Obviously, it was maybe because of production. They may be behind, but it just seemed like they were wasting no time with getting this flipped over to Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
Yeah, and they don't have much time to waste. It's if you're talking year and a half for these attractions. I believe Florida is they're targeting summer of 2024, ours in the fall or winter of 2024. You're only giving a year and a half, which is an attraction of this scale. It's pretty ambitious. We'll have to see how this actually materializes for sure, but I guess they've been held up in New Orleans for 2 years, the team, trying to research as much as possible, and that was one of the other points I wanted to bring up here. It seemed like they talk about authenticity, but then they bring up stuff like, oh well, we want to do like a water tower in front of this salt mine right here, and we looked through the archives, we went through as many of them as possible. Oh, we found a photo of a salt mine with a water tower. Okay, it's almost like they're using the research to justify their actions rather than being inspired from it and taking directly from it,
right?
Which is another kind of way of doing it. And well, that might be the reason why it's taken 2 years to do this research, because it's like, really, in the internet age, do you really 2 years? Okay, I think for the Princess and the Frog movie, I think it was only 2 weeks, and a lot of that was spent at New Orleans Square at Disneyland. Like, why are we spending 2 years on an attraction, a 15-minute attraction? This is outrageous and a horrible waste of money at a time when the company really needs to, their pension pennies everywhere they can.
These research trips, they made sense, like with Walt Disney, like in the 40s when he was researching, or the 30s when he's researching Latin America for Three Caballeros or Saludos Amigos, right? it made sense maybe back then. You know, obviously there was no internet, so it's kind of boots on the ground, go there, check it out, kind of absorb the culture, get a feel for what it is. I get that, but we live in a new world now where we do have the internet, where the Imagineers can just look something up on the internet, right? And you have also decades of Disney research that existed prior to this with
New Orleans Square.
With New Orleans. I mean, you have New Orleans Square, which I'm sure there's a ton of stuff in the archives with Walt Disney's research on that. Then you have the whole
in Florida,
right? Right, in Florida. And then you also have the Princess of the Frog movie, like you said, Dre. The animators, the artists went out to New Orleans for a few weeks and researched it for that movie. You have so much material already. Now, to go and on top of all that and to say now we need 2 years in New Orleans to research more for the attraction, it seems like, what are you guys doing? Are you just kind of going there on the company dime to vacation? I mean, I'm not trying to make any kind of accusations here, but it seems a little weird to me. You need 2 fucking years. Like, this is not like, what is this? This is crazy. And if I'm Bob Iger, I'm pissed. Bob Iger's here. He's cutting 7,000 jobs. He's removing stuff from the platform, Disney Plus and Hulu and all this to make ends meet. And then you have the Tiana Bayou Adventure crew doing 2 years of research trips over there in New Orleans. I mean, this is nuts, man.
The same amount of research that they're. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
the same amount of research. The same amount of research that they're doing. It's taking 2 years to do. It probably could have took a couple hours and did on Google. And they would have had a lot of research.
Yeah,
exactly.
Look, well, that's like what's my name? Yeah, Disney's not the only one doing research trips. Mr. Newsom, way back during the lockdowns, had to send his research teams to Disney World to figure out how they're going to open the parks over here.
With the report that they didn't actually publish, that's a dollars right there. But besides the point, well, actually, it is the point. Look, Carmen Smith, right? And there's a reason why we're bringing this up, right? Is because Carmen Smith probably is getting $250,000 a year in terms of her base salary. Do you know how expensive it would be to put up an executive like that for 2 years in New Orleans, much less an entire team? Okay, this is an inordinate amount of money being spent just on our research. And by the way, the last video that they had with these guys, they were partying it up, during at the Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans. It's like, really? Are we really doing research? And look, I will differ from OG55 a little bit here. Sure. I do apologize, brother, but
no, you're good.
If you're creating a attraction in like a three-dimensional space, right? I think there is value in going to the locations and getting up close photos of like how the roof tiles are arranged or how the water drops off and what kind of stain it makes on an exterior of a wall. Similar to like Joe Rohde creating Expedition Everest, right? There's a great famous Discovery documentary on the creation for that attraction, and they talk about that research trip and how informative it was for the actual attraction, and they show like images of like what it was like in actual Nepal and what it's like in at Disney's Animal Kingdom for Expedition Everest. And it's like, okay, I understand why they did that, right? And it benefited the attraction to an insane degree. I'm not seeing any of that represented here. And it is very disturbing because we're talking probably 10 million, 20 million, maybe even more spent just on research. I mean, we're sending money down the bayou at a time when every single dollar counts. And look, Bob Iger wants to cut $5.5 billion by the end of the year, and 7,000 jobs, like you said, OG. I mean, how many people we have retained had we not spent 2 years in New Orleans?
Yeah,
for a very modest overlay, by the way.
Yeah, no, exactly. You have to, and this is definitely a remnant of the pre-pandy, where like we're kind of seeing that in the studio side too. Like a lot of this stuff is sort of like coming to bite the company in the ass now, and I think things will change going forward. And I think a lot of stuff is sort of like baked into the cake, and it's kind of too late to like change it now. I'm telling you though, I'm sure Bob Iger is not a happy camper with this. I'm sure he's probably looking at the invoices for these trips, going, "What is going on? You guys are never doing this again. You are never doing this
No.
again."
Because it's so expensive. You have massive pushback from the media. We're seeing 6-hour lines for this thing at both locations when this thing is closing down, right? So it's obviously not the fans have an opinion about it, of which we've never seen before. We're getting brand withdrawal based on some of these actions, especially as it relates to Tiana's Bay Adventure specifically, and all for what? Something that won't move the needle at all, right? It won't be booking vacation packages, and either resort won't benefit from a capacity increase.
No,
That's a lot of money to get that end result that I just described there.
There were a million different smarter solutions to this that they could have employed, that they could have deployed. There are so many different ways, creative solutions. I think what happened was, and we're coming up on 2 hours, so we're gonna be closing up in a minute or so. But I think what happened was they panicked. The 20. When did that happen? 2020, I believe it was.
2020, yeah.
The George Floyd stuff, and I think they panicked and they jumped the gun on this, and they, it was a panic kind of solution, and I think they should have took the time to really think this thing out. Look, I'm not saying you have to keep the problematic theme. I'm not even arguing that. Like, I'm not even saying, like, if they want to get rid of it because the movie has been banned for decades and it's problematic, fine. I just think that the solution could have been handled better. Now, I will say this though, I am a half glass full kind of guy, and I do believe we're going to get a solid retheme. I do believe it'll basically, I think it'll be better than what the conservatives think it's going to be. Like, I don't think it's going to be a total shit show, crap thing. But it's also probably not going to live up to the old attraction. So I think the truth, like it usually does, is probably going to be somewhere in the middle. And that's kind of think where honestly, I'm kind of putting it.
It'll probably make sense with the Tiana series if people watch it, but people have to watch it.
Is that show out already, or?
I was just gonna bring that up, Jalen. Dusty actually referenced. It's probably the plan is to integrate it with the actual TV show. So OG, we have been speculating that there will be some cross pollination or integration there, and it looks like there is. But we know that show has been postponed indefinitely. So I don't know how that's gonna work. That's gonna be an interesting thing as it develops here. And it might benefit from having that kind of subtext provided for by the show itself, and maybe it'll get people open to the idea of this attraction taking place around that time, and maybe the Imagineers are maybe banking on that. But now the timelines for those are going to be very skewed. We'll see what actually ends up happening. To be honest, I don't think a lot of people are going to watch it. I'm sorry, Disney's had a real tough problem getting people to watch the original programming. I think that's going to be the same thing for Tiana.
Well, something I was just thinking about is the amount of effort and quickness that they're doing with this attraction, like as if it could be the biggest priority. Why couldn't they use this on any other attraction? Like, why did Tron take multiple years? And that I would prioritize that over. That just seems like more of a pull and more of a money grabber than Princess and the Frog. Why was that such a big delay? It could do with construction and stuff like that, but the way they're moving on this, it's like, oh my goodness.
Because of the amount of investment, I think they wanted to spread the investment on Tron specifically out quarter to quarter to quarter, which pushed it back. And as we were going on about OG, we have our dear friend George actually is in Walt Disney World right now. Actually, he sent us a photo, which I should bring up. On-field reporter, might as well. But he was just saying himself after riding Tron for the first time, he's just like, here we go, right here. Here's the image that he got of Splash Mountain, right there, and with the Chickpin Hill removed. he was saying, yeah, Tron, I mean, 6 years for that, it's just not the attraction that was built up for all that time and the hype that had been generated around it. And largely because Cosmic Rewind came after. Velocicoaster came after. Velocicoaster was never supposed to supersede Tron by such an extent. And unfortunately, they kind of missed the boat on that. I think that's what happened, Jalen. And yeah, and also supply chain issues as well, for sure. But with Splash Mountain, I think there are different reasons surrounding both of these things, and that's why they're prioritizing Tiana's Bayou Adventure to such a degree, because there's there's a cultural subtext there, but there's also a capacity one too. Magic Kingdom cannot afford for this thing to be down for a very long time.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we're going to close it out today. Fantastic conversation all about Tiana's Bayou Adventure. There's a lot going on here with this one. This is going to be heavily, the curiosity factor for this attraction is going to be through the roof when this thing opens. Whether people support it or not support it. I got to tell you too, and I think Ethan probably agrees with me on this one. The Save Splash Mountain people, you guys gotta rebrand, man. Because the attraction is gone. Okay, they've already started cutting into it. Focus your energy on pushing Disney to make the new ride better. You're not getting Splash Mountain back, y'all. Okay, it's not happening. Just move on. It's not coming back.
I had some battles with some people a while ago when they first announced. Like, dude, like you act like by you arguing, you typing these paragraphs. You act like Bob Iger himself is gonna be like, this person's upset. Let's just stop everything and let's just keep this Splash Mountain. Like, let's be real. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, like, come on. And this has come from a person who made a position to save Tower of Terror.
There is. Yeah, but that's the thing though. You just have to be smart about it. Like, I understand, like, when it was just concept art, the Save Splash Mountain campaign, you're passionate about it. Great, man. You go out there and you let them know how you feel. Absolutely. They've already closed both down. Disney World has been cut. Like, I mean, they've already jackhammered the shit out of it. And you're still talking Save Splash Mountain. Like, what are you talking about? It's like getting your leg amputated and talking about, man, I'm gonna fight so hard to keep my leg. No, your leg has been amputated. You will not get your leg back. Like, stop.
I'm in trouble. I can't believe how this is all kind of happened, why we're here, like how we got here versus where we were the journey. It's gonna be interesting to see. I think those Save Splash Mountain people will morph into hate to Princess Tiana's Bayou Adventure people and bring back Splash Mountain people. I think that's where they're going there.
The review's already written. I'm telling you with that. They've decided they're gonna hate it. So.
You're never gonna win them over. The hope is that the average guest is won over. That's my hope. Right. I understood. There was no getting around people's love for Splash Mountain, being superseded by this. Like the people who were really passionate about it in the form of Splash Mountain folks. To save Splash Mountain folks. I knew that was going to happen, but can we at least get the normies and the general guest and everybody on board there? And I've not seen many encouraging things. And frankly, this is like the last team you want doing an attraction like this. To be honest.
Yeah.
So,
we'll see.
Sorry, I'm not as optimistic as OG. I'm trying to be. I was looking for it. I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. But Dre, I'll start with you, sir. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
The best place to find me is going to be at Vash Sky on Twitter, which actually I posted some photos of some of the things that are going on at Disneyland right now in terms of this Splash Mountain thing, how they've been changing over some of the maps and some of the penny presses and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very interesting. You can go there for that, and of course, robust discussion, as Christine, my son's McCarthy would say. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55. We have some amazing shows, especially ones in the works right now. We had to get our buddy George back in order to go over our experiences at Disneyland and his experiences at Walt Disney World. Very interesting. Also, too, we have Citrus Corner, hosted by the aforementioned George. Disney George, Orange Grove 55, what you're watching right now, and Shutshish Corner, where we talk about all things C-suite as it relates to Disney and the entertainment industry at large. Story Geeks with Jay, where we talk about the stories that impact our lives, and according my own, Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh, right from the Grove.
There's no turning back now.
No turning back now, guys.
There we go. And down below, we got Jalen. Jalen, thank you so much for coming on, man. I love your passion, Jalen. I really, really do. And we'll have you on again very, very soon, and we'll talk shop with you once again, sir. But if you could let everybody home know where they can find you on Twitter, sir.
You can find me on Theme Park EXP 626, better known as Theme Park Experiment 626. You get the idea. I'll be in the community talking with you guys, amongst you guys, sharing details. And just to mention, we got to pull off one of those OG 55 reunions at Disneyland so we can conquer the park again.
Yes.
I missed that last trip, but now that I'm a Magic Key holder, I definitely got to be around you guys more often. So,
what are you, Jalen? What are you doing on July 17th? Because I know OG's going to be there, and we're all going to be there. Very
is that a
much
weekend?
invited.
Is that a weekend?
It's a Monday.
Oh, it's a Monday. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, Mondays are fine.
All right. Well, there it is. It's official.
There it is.
And then right over here to my diagonal, we got Mr. Theme Park Wizard Ethan, our Universal guy, talking all kinds of stuff over there on his channel about what you guys are doing now, like the Fast and Furious coaster over there for Universal.
Yeah, you'll see. You'll see plenty of info on that. As I'm losing my voice, you can go ahead and subscribe to me on Theme Park Wizard on YouTube, Twitter at theme_wizard. Buy my stuff from themeparkwizard.shop, or I'll rip you off. And follow me on Instagram, theme_park_wizard. Whee!
There you go. There he is. There he is.
Really?
There he is, Mr. There he is, Mr. Wizard. So, I want to thank everybody at home today for taking the time and
Jalen's got to do. Jalen has to sign himself off, right? Or have
he
we
did?
Done that?
He did.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
I need to drop
on the show. Awesome.
I definitely need to drop though. I'll figure out. I need to drop though. That's everybody got the little drop outros, intros. I need me one of those.
Sure.
I missed it, and I do apologize, but I'll give you one now. There you go, right there.
There you go.
How about
But
that?
yeah, we should. Jalen, think of a little thing that you want to say. A little outro on your own, with your own personality, your own flavor. Definitely we can do that. I'm actually working on a drop. We have one for Captain John D, the pyro one. I'm working on one for Theme Park Wizard. It's just gonna be freaking awesome. Coming soon, but we'll see. But Jalen, I definitely want you to get creative. Whatever kind of outro you want to do. If you have an idea for your own little visual drop, let me know. I can make that happen too. So absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
All right. Appreciate it.
But links all down below for all the social medias. And thank you all so much for watching. I think, Ethan, we'll let Lisa from Blackpink sign us out today. Here we go.
I'm getting kicked as a fat chick, hauling a roll like a frat chick. The smart mouth with dumb heat, like iced tea of OG, like iced tea of OG, like